Chapter 1383. Using the no-name flag, the Demon King Alliance's sovereignty over the sun, and Galji's another cosmology, in exchange for their lives. This unexpected development caused Belle's expression to completely freeze on the spot. Not to mention Belle, even Glea and Aurora's expressions froze. Galji, who was lying on the ground and covering his neck, also narrowed his eyes slightly as he stared at Noah. Only Letitia and Pest's eyes completely lit up. As far as Letitia was concerned, the matter of retrieving the community's flag was undoubtedly more important than taking the lives of a few people. After all, the flag was the glory, experience, and life of a community. Only a community with a flag could truly carry out activities in the box. For example, a business-type community needed a flag to play the role of a brand. A community that mainly hosted games also needed a flag to carry out publicity. Even transactions required a flag. Otherwise, no one would send an expensive item to a nameless person. In every community, even the children looked up to the community's flag and were instructed by countless ancestors to become people who do not disappoint that flag as they gradually grew up. Only under the flag would people gather together and create cohesion. Therefore, for a community, the importance of the flag was too great. If she could take back the flag, Letitia would definitely not mind directly making a move on Belle. Unfortunately, in the box, the bestowment game was the law above all. Even the rulers of the hierarchy who guarded the order could not violate the rules of the bestowment game. Meanwhile, the no-name flag was openly taken away in the bestowment game. Even if the bestowment game was played by the Demon King, the result was the result. If they ignored the result of the bestowment game and forcibly seized the flag, in the end, it was very likely that they would not be recognized by the core of the box, causing the flag's effect to be abolished. Then, it would really be impossible to reverse the situation. Letitia could not take this risk. That was why Letitia did not directly make things difficult. Noah also made this request because of this consideration. In the box, normal transactions also existed. Therefore, if they took back the flag through legitimate negotiations, the core of the box would have to recognize it, right? As for the sovereignty of the sun and the simulated star atlas, another cosmology, those two gifts were undoubtedly more threatening than Galji and the others. Almost all of Galji's strength came from these two blessings. If they lost the sovereignty of the sun and the power of another cosmology, then even if Galji survived, he would not be much of a threat. As for seizing it by force, that was also out of the question. Other than the gift of materialization, the gift of coexisting with an individual was directly linked to the soul. Unless the individual was willing, no one could take such a gift by force. It was just like Letitia's godhead. If it wasn't done willingly, it couldn't be removed. Noah had heard that the sovereignty of the sun could be transferred, but he had never heard that it could be seized by force. Otherwise, the gods with more than 3 digits would have started a bloodbath over the sovereignty of the sun. As for the simulated star atlas, another cosmology, Noah had only heard of the existence of this foul gift today. Naturally, he did not know whether he could snatch it or not. Based on the above reasons, Noah agreed to negotiate and made this request. Retrieving the flag was for the sake of the community. Obtaining the sovereignty of the sun and the simulated star atlas, another cosmology, was equivalent to crippling Galji and clearing up the previous grudges. Understanding this, Ling's face was gloomy. Seeing this, the corners of Noah's mouth curled into a cold smirk. He lifted one of his feet and stomped it down heavily. Bang! The powerful stomp was mixed with a heavy muffled sound and landed directly on Galji, who was lying on the ground. Pfft! Galji, who suffered a heavy blow, spat out a mouthful of blood and squeezed out a bitter sound from his throat. Your Highness. Ling, Glea, and Aurora were shocked. I don't have time to tangle with you here. Noah looked coldly at Ling. You said that you had no choice but to carry out the operation so far to protect yourselves. Then, now is the time when you need to protect yourselves the most. What should you do? I believe that you will make a decision that will satisfy me, right? Ling immediately bit her lips and her eyes were full of struggle. At this time, Galji, who was stepped on by Noah in the chest, coughed out a mouthful of blood and laughed self-deprecatingly. Okay, Ling, let's agree to their conditions. Your Highness. Ling, Glea, and Aurora exclaimed at the same time. However, Galji blocked them with a sentence. Losing the sovereignty of the sun and the simulated star atlas, another cosmology, is indeed a serious blow, but if you lose your life, then everything is over. There is no need to hesitate about what to choose. Belle, Glea, and Aurora were at a loss for words. Under such circumstances, Galji raised his head and looked at Noah as he said, "Don't worry, Noah. Leo's sovereignty of the sun was originally something that belonged to your community. If I return it to you, then we are even. As for my simulated star atlas, another cosmology, that thing can't be given to you. It is a cosmology that was born after I was born. If I give it to you, I might not even be able to maintain my existence, and you won't be able to use it. It is equivalent to a waste product." Galji said this and looked in Ling's direction. However, the seal of the three-headed demonic dragon was formed by the sovereignty of the dragon son of the 12 equatorial stars and another simulated star atlas, another cosmology. Now, they are all in Ling's hands, so I will use them as a replacement for you. I don't think you will be disappointed, right? The sovereignty of the dragon son and another simulated star atlas, another cosmology. Noah glanced at Letitia. Letitia immediately nodded, proving that Galji's words were true. It was no wonder that Galji and his group were desperate to unlock the seal of the final trial. So, apart from the surveillance of Maxwell, the Demon King Alliance, there was also the tangible benefits of the sovereignty of the sun and the simulated star atlas, another cosmology. The sovereignty of the Leo constellation sun. The sovereignty of the dragon sun. And the simulated star atlas, another cosmology. Galji used these three, which were the most precious gifts to the entire box court, in exchange for the lives of the four of them. As for your flag, we are no longer able to give it to you, said Galji. As the other key to the seal, that flag will become the symbol of the three-headed demonic dragon after the seal is unlocked. You will only be able to retrieve your flag if you defeat it. WH. What? Letitia looked as if she was struck by a bolt from the blue. She began to sway. Defeat that demon king. Tisk. Pest also smacked her lips. She clearly felt that there was no hope. Only Noah, when he was about to say something, felt an indescribable throbbing in his heart. This throbbing was very familiar to Noah. This caused Noah to suddenly turn his head and look in the direction of the erupting volcano. So that's how it is. So it's there. Defeating the humans in the final trial. For anyone, this was something that could make one's heart turn cold. However, Noah managed to comprehend it. He had no choice but to defeat such an existence. After understanding this, Noah turned his head and looked at Galji. Then handed over. Hearing this, Galji smiled as if he was relieved of a heavy burden, but also as if he had given up on himself. He extended a hand and grabbed Noah's foot that was stepping on his body. I'll return what belongs to you. A dazzling golden light flashed from Galji's body. It passed through Galji's hand and surged into Noah's body, causing Noah's entire body to shine. Chapter 1384. Rumble. The volcano that had entered a berserk state continued to tremble, causing scorching hot lava and black smoke to erupt and spread in all directions. In the utterly ruined flame capital, the members of Salamandra were retreating in an organized manner. They looked like residents who had met with a disaster and were in a very sorry state. Noah, Letitia, and Pest transformed into 3 streaks of light and flew through the air. They watched as the surrounding pterosaur creatures carried the wounded in salamandra and fled one after another. However, they were fleeing in the opposite direction. Instead of retreating, they were fleeing in the opposite direction. Then, the three of them discovered Shadora flying in the air and Mandela riding a fire dragon at the back of the group. Immediately, Noah, Letitia, and Pest stopped flying. Seeing Noah and the other two, Shadora was overjoyed at first. Then, she anxiously called out, "Everyone! Right now, a great disaster is about to befall this place. Please hurry and escape from Flame Capital. You all." Mandela felt that something was amiss. His face sank as he stared at Noah. "Where did you all go before this?" An unprecedented earthquake struck the entire Flame Capital, causing the volcano to erupt. With such a great commotion, it was impossible for Noah and the others to not notice it. However, Noah and the others only appeared now. This matter was truly too abnormal. Noah naturally understood Mandela's question. However, he did not have the time to explain and directly spoke. The people of the Demon King Alliance undid the seal. Before that, we had a conflict with them. However, in the end, the seal was still undone. This was not an excuse. Although Noah and the others had used the object positioning to find Galgi and the others to settle the score, they had also thought of stopping them after learning of Galgi and the others' plan. This was especially true for Letitia, who knew how terrifying the humans' final trial was. She immediately launched an attack. Unfortunately, the other party was not someone who could be easily dealt with. Letitia and Pest were tied down by Glea and Aurora. Noah, on the other hand, was blocked by Galgi and Maxwell, two four-digit existences. One of them could deflect all weapons in the world, while the other had an undying body. They managed to stop Noah. Admittedly, Noah didn't reveal his trump card and didn't bypass the two of them to deal with Belle, who was in charge of unlocking the seal. But even if he did, he would still be stopped, right? With Maxwell's immortal body, even if Noah were to use his trump card, he would still be entangled with Maxwell. If he chose to go around the two of them and deal with Ling, Maxwell, who was adept at space jumping, could still chase after him with Galgi. Therefore, although Noah could not say that he did his best, the result would not change. In that group, the most difficult one to deal with was not Galgi or Belle, but Maxwell. Maybe it was because of this that Maxwell had the ability to monitor Galgi and the other three of them alone. In fact, Noah even believed that Maxwell was still alive. In any case, now is not the time to talk about this. Noah looked up and cast his gaze in the direction of the erupting volcano. "You guys should leave quickly. This place will soon turn into hell." Now, Noah could clearly feel it. There was an indescribable evil aura that was restless underground. And that indescribable evil aura was expanding on the active volcano that was overflowing with magma. That aura made Noah's body surge with power. The fighting spirit in his heart rose in a way that was completely different from his mood. When the existence known as the God Slayer encountered an enemy god or an unimaginably powerful enemy, his body and mind would naturally enter the best battle state. Adrenaline, which was dozens or even hundreds of times stronger than normal people's adrenaline, would fill the God Slayer's body, allowing him to unleash more than 120% of his terrifying combat strength. Now, Noah was in this state. Even under the stimulation of that aura, the stone plate that represented authority in Noah's heart trembled like never before. Inexplicably, Noah understood why his power was boiling like this. Noah's authority was the final result of his own physique, fusing the power of the invincible god of victory, Welslana, and the Mediterranean king of gods, Mercado, plus his own power. And now, the fighting spirit in Noah's heart had awakened the power of the invincible god of victory. In short, it was Noah's instinct that was at work. Thirst for a strong enemy. Thirst for battle. Thirst for victory. The essence of the God Slayer and the God of Victory were warring. So, Noah murmured almost subconsciously, "I am the strongest, and I hold all victory in my hands. Whether human or demon, I am the one who defeats the hostility of all enemies. I will defeat any enemy that stands in my way." That was all the holy words that belonged to the invincible God of Victory. This holy word could make curse power, which included magic power, divine power, all the power that could be used to use the mysterious power active and exert 120% of its power. Noah only discovered it later. Chanting this holy word, Noah's own power would also be increased, making the infinite magic power, divine power in his body explosively expand. It was also at this moment that the erupting volcano abruptly stopped. Kaboom! Following a resounding boom, the entire peak of the volcano exploded into smithereens. Then, a black shadow with open wings burst out from it, rubbing against the atmosphere, and rushed into the sky with a sharp sound. Like a meteorite, there was a flame in front of it, and finally, it stopped in midair. Chapter 1385. Swoosh! Like a sharp blade, the sharp claws that brought death swept through the air. It seemed like a simple blow, but it had a terrible power that could stir up heaven and earth. The proof was that wherever the claws passed, the atmosphere in the space was completely squeezed under the claws, turning into a terrible cyclone that swept out, causing the space to ripple violently. As a result, under such a claw, Noah only felt that the raging wind around him was scattered, bringing a terrible pressure. That pressure even made Noah's bones creak as if they could not bear the burden, and his pupils shrank to the size of a needle tip. However, in the face of such a terrible blow, Noah did not have any fear in his heart. Or rather, the fighting instinct that originated from the God Slayer and the nature of the God of Victory made Noah's high fighting spirit erupt at this moment, and the divine power in his body was completely boiling. There was no hesitation. At this moment, the stone plate in Noah's heart suddenly turned, and it instantly turned to the incarnation of the Dragon Emperor. Boom! At this moment, a monstrous wave of divine power gushed out of Noah's body with an extremely astonishing momentum, turning into a crimson dragon shadow that covered Noah's whole body. The fatal blow that fell from the sky suddenly fell on Noah's body. Boom! Accompanied by a dull sound that caused the earth to tremble, a crimson figure was heavily slapped away. Like a rubber ball, it rubbed against the air and crashed into the dilapidated buildings one after another. Boom! 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 The crimson figure smashed all the buildings that were already on the verge of destruction along the way, raising debris all over the sky. It was not until a long time later that it finally slowed down a little and landed on the ground. Even so, the crimson figure was still violently retreating, cutting a long and deep gully like an abyss in the ground. Finally, it barely stabilized its body and stopped in a corner of the messy ground. Only then did the debris that was smashed into pieces all over the sky fall to the ground, incessantly stirring up bursts of sand and dust and rumbling sounds. At the end of the ravine that was as long as an abyss, Noah, whose entire body was swollen with a crimson dragon shadow, was kneeling on the ground with one knee. He slowly lifted his head, revealing a pair of deep, dark eyes filled with solemnity in the air. Looking carefully, a trace of blood slowly flowed down the corner of Noah's mouth. Yes. Even if he used the incarnation of the Dragon Emperor and was protected by the air scales, that terrible claw still passed through the air scales and caused slight damage to Noah. It was just a simple claw. This was the power of the final trial of humans. This was the three-digit Demon King. Whoosh! Flapping its pitch-black wings that seemed to be able to roll up tornadoes, the three-headed dragon slowly flew down from the air, landed on the ground, and let out an extremely shocking roar. The strange roar that humans could not understand turned into a substantial sound wave, and with a momentum that could shake the ground, it swept out in all directions. At this time, Noah seemed to be in a stormy sea formed by the wind. His robe was violently blown up, and even the crimson aura on his body was slightly fluctuating. However, Noah seemed to feel nothing, as if he did not see anything. His deep dark eyes stared at the three-headed dragon. No. More accurately, it should be said that he was staring at the three-headed dragon's chest. There was something that only Noah could see. A tattered feather that seemed to have been broken off, floating in the three-headed dragon's chest, emitting a weak white light. Yes. That was the world fragment. When Galgi mentioned that he had to defeat the humans in the final trial, Noah felt a throbbing feeling. This was the reason why. The world fragment that was lost in this world was in the body of the three-digit demon king known as the final trial of humans. Whoosh! It was also at this moment that the pitch-black shadow-like wings on the back of the three-headed dragon suddenly swelled up. Amidst a trembling sound, the wings suddenly turned into many shadow blades that sliced through the atmosphere. They were like a torrential rain that covered the sky and earth as they swept out in Noah's direction. Seeing this, Noah could not help but be shocked. A dragon shadow that can transform. Wasn't that Letitia's dragon's shadow? The three-headed dragon also had a dragon's shadow. He only had time to think about this, as the shadow blade that cut through the atmosphere swept in front of Noah. Noah did not have time to think too much. His feet fiercely stomped on the ground, and at the same time, his body turned into a crimson ray of light, explosively retreating. Bang! The shadow blade that cut through the atmosphere suddenly fell on the ground where Noah was previously standing, causing the ground to explode. After the attack missed, the three-headed dragon's pair of red jade-like eyes flashed with a strong ominous glint. The dragon's shadow behind him twisted, turning into shadow blades, and slashed towards Noah from all directions. Facing the overwhelming shadow blades that swept towards him, the precious gems on Noah's crimson dragon shadow flashed brightly. Boost, supercharge, boost, supercharge, boost, supercharge, boost, supercharge, boost, supercharge, boost, supercharge. The heavy voice sounded one after another, causing the crimson dragon shadow that wrapped around Noah's body to suddenly expand. On the dragon shadow's outline, pieces of dragon scales could be clearly seen, enveloping Noah within. In the next second, the shadow blades that cut through the atmosphere like an overwhelming rainstorm fell on top of the crimson dragon shadow. Clang, 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 clang. Numerous shadow blades fiercely bombarded the air scales, causing waves of crisp sounds and dazzling sparks. After multiplying several times, the air scales blocked the three-headed dragon's attack. However, through the air scales, Noah, who clearly sensed how powerful the power of the three-headed dragon's shadow blade was, frowned. No matter if it was quality, power, quantity, or speed, the three-headed dragon's shadow far surpassed Letitia's dragon shadow. However, unlike Letitia's ever-changing dragon shadow, the three-headed dragon's dragon shadow seemed to be very simple to use. It could only form shadow blades or wings for flight. But because of this, its power was strengthened to the extreme. If he continued to passively defend, it was only a matter of time before the air scales were broken. In this kind of situation, what kind of avatar should he use? In terms of power, there was Giant. In terms of speed, there was Phoenix. In terms of destructive power, there was Storm and White Horse. In accordance with the battle situation, there was Priest and Thunder that could use various methods. In terms of group advantage, there was Herd. In terms of quick recovery, there was Elf. All kinds of avatars, if used according to the battle situation, could lead the battle situation to an advantageous situation. This was Noah's advantage. One of the reasons why Wales Lana was able to become the god of victory was because of the ability of his 10 avatars to adapt to different situations. Another reason was that when facing a god, he could always use the warrior ability to be victorious. If he had enough knowledge and could use the warrior ability, then no matter what kind of opponent he faced, he would be able to win. Therefore, this avatar was also Noah's trump card. However, Noah clenched his right hand tightly, and a trace of uncertainty appeared in his eyes. He already had the knowledge of Azdakaha. However, Noah found out that he was right. Currently, his greatest trump card, the warrior avatar, could not be used at all. Because Noah lacked the most important knowledge. The essence of the mystic dragon named Azdakaha as a human's final trial. Chapter 1386. The inheritance of the demonic dragon named Azdakaha was surprisingly simple. At least, the records in the Persian Zoroastrianism were very simple. A king somewhere was captured by the desire and evil in his heart and did all kinds of evil things. In the end, he turned into a dragon monster and became an existence that destroyed the world. This kind of story that even adults sometimes made up to coax children was the inheritance of Azdakaha. The king who turned into a dragon monster was considered to be the prototype of Azdakaha. In fact, in the inheritance of Zoroastrianism, Azdakaha had a more complicated origin. The so-called Zoroastrianism was the national religion of the ancient Persian Empire, also known as Zoroastrianism. It was the most influential religion before the birth of Christianity. The religion advocated the dualism of good and evil, and believed that everything in the world should be divided into two opposite sides. Therefore, in Persian mythology, the gods were also divided into two camps, good and evil. The good camp was led by the good god Ahura Mazda. The evil camp was led by the evil god Angola Manuel. The two camps were opposite in Persian mythology, and for many years, they had been fighting with humans as the center. The evil god wanted to destroy the world and humans. The good god wanted to save the world and humans. The two sides fought with humans as the center, and had a far-reaching impact on humans. Among them, there was a human king who was led to depravity by the evil god Angola Manuel. In the end, two ferocious and terrifying snake heads grew on his shoulders, and he completely turned into a demonic dragon. He committed all kinds of evil, and even destroyed 1/3 of the entire world. This king who was going to fall was considered to be the prototype of Azdakaha. The three-headed demonic dragon, who was considered to be the incarnation of the evil god, became the representative of the evil camp in Persian mythology, and fought for the evil god. It was worth mentioning that in Persian mythology, the sun god Mitra was the representative of the good god Ahura Mazda in the world, and he defended truth and justice from the evil power of Angola Manuel. As the guardian of Mitra, he inherited part of Mitra's war god. The god who represented the good camp was the undefeated god of victory, Velaslana. Velaslana, who had the Godslayer's sword, was the most outstanding military god in the good faction. He was famous for always winning and killing countless evil gods in the evil faction. He was feared by the gods in the evil faction. Among them, Azdakaha had been defeated by Velaslana and had become his captive. This was the inheritance of the three-headed demonic dragon that Noah knew. However, Noah only knew about the three-headed demonic dragon. He didn't know why this demonic dragon was able to surpass the three strongest species of the box court and become the final trial for humans. Humanity's final trial. As the name implied, it was the highest level of training for humans. It was the embodiment of all the elements that could destroy humanity. After all, humans were generally considered to be creatures that would eventually die out. There were many reasons for this. Some people believed that humans would develop technology that could destroy themselves. Some people believed that humans would be destroyed by fighting each other. Some people believed that human beings would destroy their living space due to overexploitation of the environment, leading to self-destruction. Some people believed that humans would eventually be affected by some kind of handmade doomsday and disappear in the long river of history. These elements could all evolve into the origin of humanity's final trial, leading to the birth of the existence known as humanity's final trial. The life and death of humans were closely related to the existence of gods. This was because people didn't know whether it was the belief of humans that led to the birth of gods, or the gods that created humans and allowed humans to appear in this world. This kind of chicken before the egg problem made humans and gods become observers of each other and closely related to each other. Therefore, if humans were to die out, the gods would also be affected. In view of this, the element that led to the destruction of humans, which was the so-called humanity's final trial, generally had the nature of a god slayer and could kill the gods. In other words, the three-headed demonic dragon named Az-Dakaha was just a pillar of the gods in the fire worship sect. Later on, because he carried the element that could destroy humans, he became humanity's final trial. What was this element? Why did it have to be Az-Dakaha who shouldered this element and became the final human trial? After becoming humanity's final trial, what kind of power did Az-Dakaha obtain to become a god slayer and defeat millions of gods? What Noah lacked was this knowledge. Without this knowledge, the warrior's clone couldn't be used on the three-headed demonic dragon. In other words, Noah had to face the most ancient demon king in the three digits without a trump card. This is going to be troublesome, as Noah muttered softly. The overwhelming shadow blades cut through the air and landed on the crimson scale like raindrops. Clang 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 clang. Intense sounds of metal colliding rang out incessantly, accompanied by dense sparks that shot out continuously. At a certain moment, a sharp shadow blade landed heavily on a spot on the crimson scale. Clang! The sound was louder than any of the metal colliding sounds before. Crack! Such a cracking sound rang out on the crimson dragon's shadow. Noah's gaze turned cold, and he turned his head abruptly to look at a corner. There, a crack had appeared on the crimson dragon's shadow, and it was gradually expanding. Under such circumstances, the overwhelming shadow blades fell from the sky and landed on the fissure one by one amidst the sharp sounds of breaking through the air. Bang! With the sound of glass shattering, the crimson dragon's shadow was directly shattered, turning into fragments that filled the sky and dissipated into the air. Then, the overwhelming shadow blades shot out from all directions and instantly surrounded the space in front of Noah. Noah was very sure. If he was hit by those shadow blades, then even if he had LV5 level durability and sword's protection to protect himself, he would still be riddled with holes and die a horrible death. At this moment, the stone plate in Noah's heart turned and pointed to the phoenix incarnation. Immediately after, with a flash of light, Noah's figure disappeared on the spot. Boom! The overwhelming shadow blades suddenly fell on the ground, and in the midst of the shocking explosion, the ground exploded, and countless gravel and sand were stirred up. It was as if a big explosion had occurred, and the scene was extremely shocking. However, looking at the place that exploded like a big explosion, the three-headed dragon's pair of red jade-like eyes flickered. A phantom abruptly burst out from the pervading smoke and dust, bringing along a series of light and shadow as it flashed in front of the three-headed dragon. Even the three-headed dragon could not react to that speed. By the time it reacted, Noah had already flashed out from the phantom and arrived in front of the three-headed dragon. Clenching his fist, he punched the three-headed dragon's chest. Noah's target was naturally the world fragment in the three-headed dragon's chest. No matter what, he had to retrieve the world fragment from the three-headed dragon's body first. Regarding the absolute evil, mystic dragon, Noah did not need to worry about the other party's safety. Even if it died, it definitely deserved to die. Since that was the case, even if he had to cut open its stomach, Noah had to retrieve the world fragment from the three-headed dragon's body. However, Noah, who had this thought, was completely shocked in the next second. Bang! Following a muffled sound, bright red blood sputtered into the air. That blood was not the three-headed dragon's blood. It was Noah's blood. After Noah's fist, which had smashed toward the three-headed dragon's chest, landed on the three-headed dragon's body, it was as if he had punched a piece of metal with a terrifying hardness. The feedback force caused his skin to break, and even his bones to let out a wailing sound. An intense pain attacked Noah's mind, and the shocked Noah could not help but let out a muffled groan. Swish! It was as if it had been waiting for this moment to appear. That extremely fast shadow blade swept out, and ruthlessly chopped down at Noah. Poochie! Thick blood splashed into the air, and sprinkled on the ground. Chapter 1387. Poochie! A black blade that could cut open the earth fell from the sky. It was like a sharp flash of light that cut through space, bringing about a clear ripping sound and a burst of crimson blood. The blood splattered on the ground and dyed it red, forming a pool of blood. The air was filled with traces of blood that were difficult to detect. Under such circumstances, a phantom retreated at extreme speed. It was like a ray of light that flashed backward until it was a distance away from the three-headed dragon. It then stopped and revealed Noah's figure. However, as soon as his figure appeared, Noah's body immediately went limp and he knelt on the ground with one knee. Drip! Drip! The sound of water droplets slowly reverberated in the air. It was the sound of blood dripping from Noah's body as he knelt on the ground with one knee on the ground. Upon closer inspection, from Noah's shoulder to the side of his abdomen, a huge wound was branded in front of Noah's body. It was as if Noah's body was cut diagonally in half. A large amount of blood flowed out from the wound and slowly dyed the ground red. Cough! Noah involuntarily coughed out a mouthful of blood. The intense pain in front of him caused him to involuntarily clench his teeth. He forcefully swallowed the sweetness that surged up his throat. His eyes stared intently at the three-headed dragon, which was emitting a violent aura. His eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. What's with that body? It was no wonder that Noah would ask such a question. The three-headed dragon's body was simply too inconceivable. So far, Noah had never encountered a situation where not only did his opponent not suffer any damage from his attack, but he, as the attacker, suffered a bitter consequence because of the reaction force. If it had been blocked or dodged, that would have been excusable. However, the three-headed dragon did not use any tricks. It only used its body to withstand Noah's attack. There was only one reason why Noah's punch did not cause any damage to his opponent and instead caused his fist to shatter. In the words of the game, it was impossible to break through its defense. The three-headed dragon's body was terrifyingly tough. Even with the blessing of LV5 ability value, a punch not only did not cause any damage to the opponent, but also hurt his own terrifying hard body because of the reaction force. Perhaps the three-headed dragon had seen through this point and purposely endured Noah's attack. Then, when Noah suffered the consequences of his own actions, it launched a surprise attack, intending to kill Noah in one fell swoop. Just now, if Noah had not used the phoenix's speed to retreat at the critical moment, that shadow blade would not have simply cut open Noah's chest, but would have cut Noah's entire body into two. Is this the real Demon King? The Demon Kings in the box court referred to the Asura gods and Buddhas who abused the authority of the organizer. However, the three-headed dragon was not that kind of existence. Humans in the final trial were all born as Demon Kings. There was no need to abuse the authority of the organizer to become a Demon King. Resisting the intense pain in his body, Noah clenched his teeth and stood up with difficulty. He took a deep breath and chanted a new language. Noble and intelligent, elegant and beautiful, I praise your life. Here you are one with nature. The outline of the 10 figures connected to the avatar suddenly turned and pointed to the figure of the elf. A fluorescent light like starlight flickered from Noah's body and covered his entire body. Under that beautiful starlight, Noah's hideous wounds and cracked fists healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Noah's somewhat pale face regained its rosy and healthy color. Seeing this scene, the three-headed dragon's 6 red jade-like eyes slightly flickered. Immediately, a heavy voice came from one of the three-headed dragon's heads. Undoubtedly, you are a human. How can you wield the power of a god like this? The sudden voice stunned Noah for a moment, then he understood what was going on. The three-headed dragon spoke. So that's how it is. Noah endured the pain and recovered as he spoke mockingly. Thinking about it, how could the evil god of the sect of fire not know how to speak? So that frightening roar from before was just a bluff. That's just to raise my monstrous nature. Since you're a monster, there's no need for you to use human language. The three-headed dragon opened its ferocious mouth and said as if it was mocking and sneering at the same time. However, there is only you and me here, so there is no need to be so stubborn. Moreover, the power you use gives me a familiar feeling, making me want to devour you. It is really strange, for thousands of years, as a demon king wreaking havoc in this world, this is the first time I have had such a feeling, so I couldn't help but want to speak a little. Saying this, the three-headed dragon's 3 heads and 6 eyes stared closely at Noah and let out a low roar. Answer me. Human hero. Why do you have the power of my enemy in your body? The three-headed dragon saw through the part of the god of victory's power that Noah used, which was the power of the god of victory. Or rather, it was strange that the three-headed dragon did not recognize the power of the hateful enemy god that had once reduced him to a captive. However, in the face of the three-headed dragon's low roar that seemed like a tornado, Noah's reply was rather relaxed and cheerful. Isn't the so-called grace a power bestowed by various Asura gods and Buddhas? Then it's not strange for me to have the power bestowed by a god, is it? No, if it was only bestowed power, it would be impossible for it to reach such strength. Moreover, rather than saying that your power was bestowed, it would be better to say that it was bestowed. That feeling is simply as if you are a true god. The three-headed dragon spoke extremely calmly. However, you are unquestionably a human. As a human in the final trial, I can very clearly confirm that you are a human. Then, how did you become a godlike existence? I am very curious about this. Is that so? Noah laughed coldly. I am also very curious about what's going on with your body. I am even curious about the nature of your final trial as a human. Then, can I ask you to give me an answer? Hearing this, the three-headed dragon fell silent. After a while, the three-headed dragon raised his 3 heads and spoke indifferently. You are right. What's going on is no longer important. What's important is whether I, as the challenged party, or you, as the challenger, will obtain victory in the end. After saying this, the three-headed dragon's 3 pairs of eyes flashed with an ominous glint once again. His entire body shook with a monstrous aura. I am a pillar of the fire worship sex gods. I am the demon king Azidakaha. I am the embodiment of evil that cannot live under the same sky. The three-headed dragon's roar turned into a fatal wind wave that blew apart the atmosphere and also blew apart the earth. Moreover, the cape on his back fluttered loudly in the wind. No. That was not a cape. That was a flag. A red flag with the primitive word evil engraved on it. This flag was carried on the three-headed dragon's back like a cape and was blown away by the sound waves brought about by the roar. This flag that was carried by the three-headed dragon like a cape was embedded into the three-headed dragon's shoulder by a screw-like iron stake. The three-headed dragon also raised his 3 heads that were also pierced by the stake and let out a roar that scattered the sea of clouds and resounded through the heavens and earth. Bring it on. The human hero that I have not seen for hundreds of years. Use all your strength. Use all your wisdom. Use all your brute strength. Try to turn into a radiant sword that can pierce through my chest. I am absolute evil. Above my corpse is justice. The roar that resounded through the heavens and earth blew up a storm that shook the heavens and earth, attempting to blow Noah into pieces. However, Noah stood with his back straight. He endured the extreme storm and muttered to himself, "That's right. Use all your strength, use all your wisdom, use all your brute strength." Suddenly, Noah fiercely raised his head and shot his gaze at the three-headed dragon like lightning. Against you. there is no need to go to that extent. Earth lizard. After shouting, Noah's body turned into a bullet that was shot out of the barrel. Like flashing lightning, he violently shot forward. Chapter 1388. Bang! Accompanied by the sound of the ground cracking, Noah, who had stepped on the ground, turned into a black shadow and shot towards the three-headed dragon. Under the elf incarnation's incredible recovery ability, Noah's wound that was no different from a fatal injury had already disappeared, leaving behind only blood that dyed his clothes red. His shattered fist was also restored to a perfect state under the elf's recovery ability. In less than a minute, he was able to completely recover from a near-fatal injury. It had to be said that the effect of the elf incarnation was simply like a nightmare to the enemy. However, in the face of the fully recovered Noah, the three-headed dragon simply opened its mouth and laughed without a care. So what if his recovery ability was extraordinary? So what if he was extremely difficult to deal with? No matter what kind of situation he faced, no matter what kind of enemy he faced, he would crush them with absolute power and bring them complete despair. That was the true Demon King. The more powerful the enemy was, the more despair he would feel when he knelt in front of him. Dakaha was standing here to bring about such despair. Come. Human hero. You have the courage to face the true Demon King alone. Let me appraise you. After saying that, the dragon's shadow behind the three-headed dragon immediately twisted and turned into a huge black blade that was over 100 feet long. With its chi sound, it cut through the void, bringing with it an unparalleled wind, and fiercely chopped towards Noah's direction. The huge shadow blade swept across the sky, causing a strong wind pressure that caused even the mountains over 100 meters away to tremble slightly. It was only a simple attack, but it was actually able to reach such a level. It was indeed worthy of being a three-digit existence. This level of attack even shattered Noah's air scales that had been multiplied several times. In just one attack, Noah's body that had reached LV5 and had reached the ace stage of durability and sword protection were cut open. In addition to that abnormally hard body, extreme strength, and extreme defense, just the power of one incarnation was not enough to deal with it. To what extent can the current me withstand using two avatars at the same time? Gazing at the gigantic shadow blade that tore through space, Noah closed his eyes for a moment before opening them abruptly. Since the battle with Orpheus, I'll prove how much I've improved. At this moment, the divine power in Noah's body seemed to be overturning the seas, surging crazily. Bang! Like a stormy sea, an extremely powerful storm of divine power erupted from Noah's body. At this moment, in Noah's heart, the stone plate with the 10 patterns connected to it suddenly trembled. On it, 2 patterns suddenly flashed with a dazzling light. Of the 2 designs, one was the giant. If he wanted to cause damage to the three-headed dragon's abnormally tough body, this was the only incarnation that Noah could think of. The other one was Phoenix. In the face of the three-headed dragon's extreme strength, using extreme speed to completely subdue it should be enough. Under such consideration, the giant, which symbolized Noah's greatest strength, and the phoenix, which symbolized his greatest speed, bloomed with dazzling light. Then, a violent power that was enough to burst a true giant's body, crazily surged within Noah's body. In the case of using 2 avatars at the same time, Noah's body and mind would bear an unimaginable burden. That burden, before Noah obtained the ability value, would only be able to bear it for less than 10 minutes before completely losing the ability to fight and even move. Now, with the ability value of LV5 and the blessing of the ace stage, durability, he was finally able to bear the burden on his body. As for the mental burden, when it attacked Noah's mind, it was blocked by a burst of light that rose sharply from within Noah's body. That burst of light was in the shape of a dragon. It was the power of the dragon sun's sovereignty of the 12 equatorial stars. In addition to being able to summon the corresponding star beast, the sun's sovereignty could also carry out the corresponding strengthening of the inheritance. The sun's sovereignty of the Leo constellation could bring the gift of invulnerability. Such a blessing would allow the Leo constellation sun's sovereign to be immune to all blade-type attacks. Galgi was able to reflect all the weapons in the world only because he used the simulated star atlas, another cosmology, using the sun's sovereignty of the Leo constellation to summon Vishnu's fourth incarnation, the man-lion Narahimo, to achieve this result. Therefore, the sun's sovereignty of the Leo constellation could only bring the gift of invulnerability. The sun's sovereignty of the dragon could allow the spirit to show a certain degree of amplification. However, Noah did not have the power of the spirit, which was unique to the box garden world. As a result, the amplification of the sun's sovereignty of the dragon turned into an amplification of the mysterious power in Noah's body, namely, the amplification of magic, divine power, and other such energy. And don't forget, Noah's magic that originated from the ability value did not consume the magic power in the energy source, but the magic power that was converted from spiritual power. Therefore, Noah thought, using the sun's sovereignty of the dragon to amplify the magic power that was converted from spiritual power, and then releasing the magic power to transform into spiritual power to strengthen his own spiritual power. As a result, the burden on his spiritual power was also shouldered. In other words, at this very moment, Noah truly obtained the power to use two incarnations at the same time without any burden. Wang. Suddenly, a giant appeared from Noah's body, and then suddenly shrank, like a layer of light and shadow, barely covering the outline of Noah's body. In the next second, Noah disappeared from the spot. Pang! A huge shadow blade shot over and directly landed on the ground, exploding the ground and stirring up a thick cloud of sand and gravel. In the thick cloud of sand and gravel, a phantom burst out, and with a terrifying speed, swept in front of the three-headed dragon. The three-headed dragon's expression suddenly changed. However, at this time, it was already too late to react. Noah clenched his fist tightly, and the light and shadow that covered the outline of his fist suddenly expanded, converging into a blurry giant's fist. Block it again for me to see. After saying that, Noah's fist was like an erupting volcano, with a terrifying fist wind and dense light, and heavily bombarded the three-headed dragon's abdomen. Dong! Accompanied by a deafening sound that was so heavy that it seemed to shake the world, a terrifying air current swept out from where Noah and the three-headed dragon were like a tempest. It turned into an intense impact that caused the ground in the vicinity to collapse for close to 100 meters. After that, a figure flew out from within like an arrow that had left its bow, and it rubbed against the air. Amidst the sharp sounds of the air tearing apart, it smashed apart numerous dilapidated buildings all along the way, causing debris to fill the sky. It was the three-headed dragon that was blasted away. Just like when the three-headed dragon sent Noah flying at the beginning. This time, it was the three-headed dragon's turn to be blasted away. At the same time, a phantom burst out like a meteor, easily catching up with the three-headed dragon that was smashing through the buildings along the way, and flashing under its body. In the next second, a strong and powerful kick soared into the sky, bringing along a light and shadow, and fiercely kicked the three-headed dragon's back. Pang! In the stifled sound that made people's hearts contract, the three-headed dragon, who had an abnormally heavy and hard body, was kicked into the sky by the force of the impact. The strong impact from the whole body turned into a substantial pain that attacked the three-headed dragon, causing the three-headed dragon to finally react. It flapped the wings formed by the shadow of the dragon on its back, stopping its body from soaring into the sky. However, at this moment, the three pairs of red jade-like eyes in the three-headed dragon's three heads suddenly shrank. This was because a huge fist that covered the sky, like a mirage, suddenly fell from the sky with an unimaginable speed, exploding on the three-headed dragon's body. Boom! Along with a roar that resounded through the space, the huge fist that covered the sky and the sun blasted the three-headed dragon into the ground, causing the ground to sink layer by layer. With a hysterical roar, the giant phantom's fist suddenly trembled and involuntarily rose up bit by bit. If that's all you've got, that won't be able to crush the banner of evil that I bear. Heroes of the human race. Ah! With such a roar, the three-headed dragon seemed to be holding up the sky. The veins all over its body bulged, and its three heads roared towards the sky, bursting out with an extremely terrifying power. It actually lifted the giant phantom's fist, which was many times larger than itself. Looking at this extremely unrealistic scene, even Noah's expression sank bit by bit. Then, a fierce light appeared on his face. I'd like to see if you can really hold on. In Noah's heart, the two images of the giant and the phoenix that were shining dazzlingly at the same time suddenly dimmed and was replaced by another image. The image that dimmed was the phoenix. It was replaced by the dragon emperor. Wang. The giant phantom that blotted out the sky suddenly twisted fiercely, and its entire body surged with a scarlet flame, gradually changing shape. Not long after, the giant phantom that blotted out the sky transformed into a scarlet dragon that also blotted out the sky. From head to toe, the gem-like treasures on its body flashed with a light. Boost, 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 boost. Every time a clear voice was heard from the sparkling jade, the aura of the crimson dragon shadow that blotted out the sky would double in size. When the voice fell and no longer sounded, the scarlet dragon phantom's body had already expanded to 100 times its original size. Similarly, the power of the fist that bombarded the three-headed dragon's body had also increased by who knows how many times. The terrifying power caused the ferocious dragon claw-like scarlet fist to suddenly sink, causing the body of the three-headed dragon, which seemed to be able to hold up the sky with great difficulty, to also sink down heavily. Immediately, with the three-headed dragon at the center of the enormous fist as the center, cracks like the abyss of hell spread out and were filled with scorching hot magma. The three-headed dragon used all its strength to resist the enormous fist that had suddenly increased by who knows how many times, and the veins on its entire body bulged. Under the terrifying power that had multiplied by who knows how many times, the three-headed dragon still seemed to be able to support the entire sky, and was able to resist the enormous fist. TSK. Noah couldn't help but be speechless. Just how ridiculous is it? You earth lizard. Noah didn't know that although the three-headed dragon's body was only 3 meters long, its body that was only twice the size of a human's had compressed the mass of an entire continent. Therefore, when Noah's fist had previously struck the three-headed dragon, it still hadn't caused any damage, and had instead shattered the fist. In other words, Noah was currently wrestling with an entire continent. If he didn't have the power to shake an entire continent, then he wouldn't be able to do anything to the three-headed dragon. Then, can Noah, who used both the giant and the dragon emperor avatars, shake the continent? The answer would be revealed in the next moment. Poochie. Suddenly, a piece of muscle on the three-headed dragon's body exploded. Under the unimaginable power, although the three-headed dragon relied on its terrifying willpower to hold on, its body was the first to be unable to hold on and exploded. And all of a sudden, it seemed to have caused a chain reaction. Poochie, poochie, poochie. The muscles on the three-headed dragon's body exploded one after another, and thick blood splashed out and sprinkled on the ground. However, the blood that sprinkled on the ground melted into the ground, causing the soil to distort and transform into clones that were a size smaller than the three-headed dragon, roaring towards the sky. Seeing this, Noah's gaze turned cold. He had almost forgotten. This absolute evil was able to transform its own blood into a god-level clone, and could create a group of gods by itself. Go! My clones! The three-headed dragon roared as it resisted the huge fist that was covered in blood. Let's wipe out the enemy. The god-level two-headed dragon suddenly roared and rushed towards Noah's direction. A sharp glint flashed across Noah's eyes as he watched the twin-headed dragon pouncing towards him. If you can do it, Then give it a try." After saying this, Noah stretched out a hand. A golden ripple like a water wave fluctuated from his side, and a knight's sword that shone like gold popped out. Tightly holding the golden knight's sword, Noah's body exploded with terrifying divine power. Boost, 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 boost. The power that had been multiplied countless times was poured into the knight's sword in his hand. Pang! The knight's sword, which was shining like gold, suddenly burst out with a shocking aura. Excalibur. Holding the shining knight's sword, Noah raised it high above his head and slashed down heavily. A pillar of light that connected the heavens and the earth suddenly appeared in this area and shot toward the two-headed dragons that were pouncing toward them, completely drowning the two-headed dragons that were at the level of gods. Chapter 1390. Wang. The huge beam of light that caused the space to tremble swept straight ahead. It was like a meteor that pierced through the sky, shining with a dazzling light that was enough to burn people's eyes. It drowned the two-headed dragons that were pouncing toward it. After being multiplied by the Dragon Emperor's incarnation countless times, the two-headed dragons that were at least at the level of deities, which could definitely be ranked in the top 5, were directly annihilated in the light and turned into ashes. Under such circumstances, the light beam that pierced through the sky and the earth shot forward without slowing down, sweeping straight in the direction of the three-headed dragon that was facing the huge fish's shadow. The vision in front of it was completely filled by the light beam that pierced through the sky and the earth. Looking at the huge light beam that was gradually advancing toward it that even it could not ignore, the three-headed dragon's red jade-like eyes were filled with extreme fierceness. A godhead bestowment weapon named Excalibur. Is it King Arthur's item in Celtic mythology and British legends? With this, there's no way to crush absolute evil. Saying this, the three-headed dragon's entire body erupted with a blazing radiance that resembled flames. The light was even hotter than the surrounding magma. Activate Avesta. Counteracted in turn. Simulate star map, another cosmology. The flame-like light that burst out from the three-headed dragon's body instantly turned into a curtain of light that surged in all directions like a tide. The light beam that pierced through the sky and the earth directly collided with it. Boom! An earth-shattering loud bang resounded. At this moment, a destructive force swept out from the collision of the two auroras like a storm, causing the whole world to tremble at this moment as if there was an earthquake. Dong! Finally, the earth could not bear the burden and exploded, turning into pieces of debris that were swallowed by the magma that emerged from the depths of the earth. Boom! The magma that formed an ocean made an explosive sound, setting off fiery red waves formed by hot mud that surged in all directions. The entire magma ocean suddenly expanded, submerging pieces of land in an instant. It only stopped when it surged to the towering mountains and was blocked as if it was slapping on a reef. In the center of the magma ocean, the destructive storm caused by the collision of the two auroras was still raging, forming a ring-shaped shock wave that swept to the surroundings. Thus, mixed with the magma, the shock wave that was like a flaming storm seemed to connect the heavens and the earth like ripples, spreading to a range of nearly 1,000 meters, thousands of meters, and even tens of thousands of meters. Wherever it passed, the earth was smashed into pieces and sunk into the magma ocean. That scene was like a red lotus hell that could destroy the heavens and the earth, Ordinary people simply could not imagine it. After an unknown amount of time had passed, the storm that contained destructive power gradually. What was left was only an endless ocean of magma that was blocked at the end of the mountain range. The magma ocean was still surging with waves, bringing with it the sound of exploding water, constantly rolling over and over. The capital of brilliant flames had already sunk into this ocean, and not a trace of it could be seen. Splash! At a certain moment, in a corner of the magma ocean, a huge splash exploded, revealing a figure from within. Ha! 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 The three-headed dragon with a pair of wings formed by a pitch-black dragon shadow was suspended in mid-air, panting violently while clutching its chest. At that spot, a glowing heart had appeared out of nowhere. That was the most fatal weakness of the three-headed dragon. Noah did not know that in order to defeat the three-headed dragon, he had to attack its three vital points. The first was the head. The second was the shoulders. The third was the heart. And after years of fighting with other species as the Demon King, the three-headed dragon's three heads had already been pierced through by pile-like objects, and the flesh on its shoulders had also been twisted into screw-like stakes that sewed flags to its shoulders. Next, as long as the three-headed dragon exposed its heart and pierced through it, the existence known as the final trial of humans would die. And the way to expose the three-headed dragon's heart was to make it spit out all of its clones. As mentioned before, the three-headed dragon's clones could not be split without restraint. Every time it split, a part of its spiritual core would have to be separated. In other words, only when the spiritual core of the three-headed dragon was reduced to a certain extent as the clones split would its heart be exposed. Using a martial tool as an analogy, the three-headed dragon's clones were like the three-headed dragon's armor. Only by peeling off this layer of armor on the three-headed dragon would he be able to cause real damage to it. Now, the three-headed dragon's armor had been completely peeled off. Who would have thought that I would be forced to this extent by a mere human? While saying this, the three-headed dragon's eyes were filled with extreme excitement. As the highest trial left by the world for humans, the three-headed dragon's existence meant the extinction of humans. The final trial of humans was the result of materializing all the factors that could destroy humans. And if humans could pass this trial, they would be able to evolve and obtain the qualifications to pass the predestined apocalypse. The three-headed dragon carried all of this on its shoulders as it fought. Only humans could defeat absolute evil. Now, there was a human who had forced the three-headed dragon, who had become the final trial of humans, into this state by himself. This was unprecedented. What a pity. Such a peerless hero is still unable to crush my evil. The three-headed dragon spat out such a regret. However, it was still too early for him to express his regret. Accompanied by the sound of something breaking through the air, a phantom shot out from the lava and appeared in front of the three-headed dragon. The three-headed dragon's body trembled as it suddenly raised its head. Immediately after, Noah, whose entire body was covered by the crimson dragon phantom, whose clothes were charred black and whose mouth had a trace of blood, entered the three-headed dragon's eyes. He was in a sorry state, and even his skin was torn apart, flowing with dark red blood. The three-headed dragon didn't even have time to react. In the next moment, the attack that contained the incarnation of the Dragon Emperor, with the support of the Phoenix's speed, swept out at a speed that could not be avoided. Poochie! A tearing sound resounded. The hand that was covered by the dragon phantom pierced through the three-headed dragon's chest and tightly grasped the glowing heart. The three-headed dragon's eyes suddenly froze. Reflected in its red jade-like eyes was the human hero who had single-handedly suppressed the final trial of humans and was covered in scars. Ha, ha. Noah met the three-headed dragon's sluggish gaze. While panting, he endured the pain in his body and spoke in a low voice. I won, Lord Demon King. After saying this, Noah tightly grasped the glowing heart in the three-headed dragon's chest and fiercely pulled it out. Poochie! Along with a thick splash of blood, the three-headed dragon's heart was pulled out of its chest by Noah. Ugh! The three-headed dragon squeezed out an unpleasant sound from its throat. Its three pairs of eyes trembled violently, and finally, gradually dimmed. Noah's trembling hand held the dragon's heart that was covered in blood and revealed a satisfied smile. However, at this moment, something unexpected happened. The three-headed dragon's pair of eyes that had gradually lost their luster suddenly flashed with light again. In its chest, a brand new heart emerged. An angry roar that resounded through the sky, the three-headed dragon waved its sharp claws as Noah's pupils suddenly shrank. Poochie! The sharp claws pierced through Noah's abdomen and came out from behind. An indescribable pain assaulted Noah's entire body. Looking at the sharp claws that pierced through his abdomen, Noah stretched out his hand with difficulty and pressed on it. He raised his head and stared unwaveringly at the three-headed dragon. "You." "Why?" The three-headed dragon calmly looked at Noah and softly said, "It's a pity. It's rare for a human hero whose martial prowess surpasses mine to appear. Unfortunately, it's easy to defeat me, but if you want to surpass me, strength alone is useless." The three-headed dragon looked at Noah as if it was regretting something. "You won against me, but you didn't surpass the final trial. That's how it is." Leaving these words, the three-headed dragon pulled its claws out of Noah's abdomen and pushed Noah into the sea of lava. As Noah fell into the sea of lava, he looked at the three-headed dragon that was looking down at him. His consciousness gradually blurred. Then, Noah, who had lost consciousness, fell into the sea of magma and was swallowed by it. No one noticed. The moment Noah fell into the lava, the three-headed dragon's heart in his hands suddenly trembled. A tattered feather floated out and touched Noah's body. In the next second, Noah disappeared. In the pure white space, Noah, who was covered in broken feathers, suddenly appeared with a scarred Noah. Immediately after, a complete feather suddenly floated over and touched Noah's body, causing Noah to disappear once again. Chapter 1391. The morning sun shone down from the sky, illuminating the red and white iron tower that seemed to reach the clouds. This iron tower, not only in this country, but also in other countries, enjoyed a bit of a reputation. Not far from this iron tower that enjoyed a bit of fame, there were extremely complex and varied buildings. Some of these buildings were high-class restaurants, some were small and medium-sized schools, some were famous TV stations, some were radio stations, and there were even embassies nearby. However, if one were to ask what was the most abundant, it would be the shrines and temples other than residences. For some reason, there were many shrines and temples on the streets not far from the famous Iron Tower. Among them, there was a shrine at the end of a complicated path, sitting on a stone platform with more than 200 steps. It was a shrine surrounded by lush trees, surrounded by lush greenery. In front of such a shrine, a young woman was currently holding a broom, using slow and rhythmic movements to skillfully sweep the floor. The young girl was wearing a very standard witch costume, and she was about 15 or 16 years old. She had long hair that reached her waist, and it emitted a beautiful luster under the sunlight. However, the young girl's hair was not black, but a brown color that was close to coffee. The scene of a young girl with long hair that reached her waist, wearing a witch costume, sweeping in front of the shrine was like a beautiful painting, and it made people feel like it could disappear at any time. And indeed, this beautiful scene was quickly destroyed by a sudden accident. Paw dash. Without any warning, in a crisp sound, the broom in the young girl's hand suddenly broke into two. This scene made the young girl's hand stop moving. She stared blankly at the broom in her hand, and after a while, she spoke in a melancholy tone. "It seems like something is about to happen." There was no doubt that this statement had no basis for ordinary people. However, the young girl was not an ordinary person. Although she was not superstitious, the young girl had an inseparable relationship with the part that would be regarded as superstitious. Therefore, the broom breaking for no reason was equivalent to an omen, and it was enough for the young girl to believe something was about to happen near her. Moreover, it was a big matter. At this moment, a frivolous voice sounded from the direction of the stone steps. "Excuse me, may I ask if you are Miss Wanla Guyoli?" Hearing this voice, the young girl called Wanla Guyoli recovered from her daze, turned her head, and looked in the direction of the stone steps. There, a person was slowly walking toward the young girl. It was a young man in a suit and leather shoes, who looked about 30 years old. He had stubble and gave people a sloppy feeling. The moment she saw this young man, Wanlagu Yoli understood. He was not an ordinary person. This was because ordinary people would not look at Wanlagu Yoli as if she was a precious talent. In front of ordinary people, Wanlagu Yoli was just a well-educated lady. However, in front of those who were not ordinary people, the value of the 10,000-mile valley would truly show. After clearly understanding this point, Wanlagu Yoli's expression suddenly became serious. "May I ask, who are you?" "My name is Kanbu, the beautiful witch Yuan." The young man introduced himself in a way that was not polite at all and handed a business card to Wanlagu Yoli. After seeing this, you should understand. Hearing this, Wanlagu Yoli accepted the business card and looked at the content on the business card. The name written on the business card was Kanbu Dongma, which was a somewhat suspicious name. However, what was more suspicious should be the title next to the name. The Official History Compilation Committee. Seeing this title, Wanlagu Yoli secretly said in her heart. The person who claimed to be Kanbu Dongma was not an ordinary person, but a member of an organization that absolutely could not be ignored in the Japanese curse world. The so-called Official History Compilation Committee refers to the organization that unified the whole Japanese curse world and directly belongs to the government. Of course, ordinary people are not likely to know the existence of this organization at all. This organization was responsible for leading almost all the regular cursemoncers and spiritual power users in this country. Inside, there were secret organizations that controlled information: Ministry of Education, Ministry of Science, National Library, Internal Palace Hall, Shrine Hall, and even the Metropolitan Police Department. In other words, unlike most magic associations in Europe and other places, there was only one organization that secretly controlled everything in this country. In other words, there was only one formal organization. And there was only one purpose for the existence of this organization. That was to hide all kinds of supernatural events in the general society, manage and deal with all the people, things, and things related to supernatural events. A secret organization with supernatural powers such as magic, curses, yin and yang, and even supernatural existences such as gods as the purpose. This was the Official History Compilation Committee. Kanbu Dongma was a member of this curse organization. As for the existence called Witch Yuan by Kanbu Dongma, it was a kind of spiritual power user. Just like the witches in Europe, Witch Yuan was also a spiritual ability user that required a rather special bloodline or talent in order to appear. 10,000 miles Gu Yoli was a witch with a special bloodline and talent. Kanbu Dongma, right? Kanbu Dongma looked at the sloppy young man. "Excuse me, why are you looking for me? You don't need to be so serious, it's not a big deal." Kanbu Dongma seemed to be deliberately teasing, and said such a sentence in a frivolous tone. "I heard that your talent in the field of spirit vision is unparalleled, so, there is something that we hope you can help us look at." Spirit vision. A mysterious ability that can decipher the mysteries of the world, and sometimes even see the future. In Europe, this was a special ability that only a very small number of descendants of witches who once served the mother goddess of the earth had. Kanbu Dongma also had this ability. Therefore, Kanbu Dongma was called Witch Yuan. However, Wanlagu Yoli furrowed his brows when he heard Ganjin Dongma's words. "Mr. Gandu, spirit vision isn't a convenient ability. Not only is the chance of triggering it extremely low, but it's also a random trigger, just like the apocalypse. Even if you ask me for help, I might not be able to see anything." "You're being modest," Winter Horse Ganchi said calmly. "Your talent in the field of spirit vision is universally recognized as outstanding. If others only have a 10% chance of triggering spirit vision, your success rate is more than 50%. Therefore, we hope that you will assist us." Kanbu Dongma suddenly became silent. After a while, the girl helplessly said, "I understand, I can try. Thank you very much." Kanbu Dongma politely bowed for the first time, and then took out a piece of cloth from his arms. Looking carefully, it was a piece of clothing. Kanbu Dongma took this piece of cloth and said, "The thing that we want you to see is this piece of clothing." Kanbu Dongma raised his eyebrows and looked at Kanbu Dongma. "The thing that you want me to see is this." "Miss Dongma, this is not an ordinary piece of cloth." They had just met, but Gonjin Dongma directly called out Wanligu Yoli's name and said such a sentence. This was left by one of the 7 god slayers in an earth-shattering battle. We spent a lot of effort to find such a piece. God Slayer. Kanbu Dongma's heart trembled. It couldn't be helped. In the magic world, this title only belonged to 7 people. Moreover, each of them had the power to shake the entire human society. They were the demon kings that everyone respected. This piece of cloth was left by the 7th king in the battle not long ago. Kanbu Dongma put on a serious expression. "We hope that you can help us investigate that king." Chapter 1392. Investigate the Demon King. Winter Horse Genmizu's words undoubtedly surprised Wanligu Yoli. Immediately afterward, Wanligu Yoli had an extremely strong resistance in his heart. At this time, in Wanligu Yoli's heart, a pair of emerald green eyes like the eyes of a lone wolf emerged from the depths of his memory. For the existence of the God Slayer, it was believed that as long as one was in the magic world, they would definitely more or less understand how terrifying they were. After all, they were both kings and demon kings. They were the only existence that could protect humans from the god of disobedience. They were also the only terrifying figures that could destroy the entire human society by themselves. In the face of such an existence, all relevant people in the magic world would be extremely cautious and even fearful of them. Like accompanying a king was like accompanying a tiger, they would always pay attention to their movements and hobbies, in order to be able to get through everything safely when they faced them. According to Wanligu Yoli's memory, there were a total of 7 god slayers in the world today. The most ferocious and violent ancient demon king, Sasha de Janstal Warban. The unparalleled Wuxia king of China, Luo Hao. The noble lady who had lived in seclusion for nearly 100 years, Madame Aisha. The hero who protected North America from the evil sorcerer, John Pluto Smith. The Black Prince who had caused many magical events, Alexander Gascoigne. The leader of Italy's Sword Alliance, Salvatore Toni. Many people were not used to the previous translated name, so from now on, this translated name will be used. There was also the most mysterious and unfathomable king who had only been born in the past half a year. He had killed 2 gods of the highest level at the same time when he was still a human and had accomplished the great feat of killing gods Noah Dole. The 7 kings, the 7 demon kings, were revered and feared by everyone in the magic world. They had absolute power that surpassed anyone in the world. In the past, Yuli of the 10,000 Miles Valley had a trace of relationship with one of the 7 kings under various coincidences. We all know that Miss Yoli has been in contact with Marquis Warban and had a bad experience. Winter Horse Ganmizu seemed to have seen through Wanligu Yoli's resistance and muttered as if he had changed the topic. Because of this, Miss Yoli should know that we can't ignore the existence of any of the kings, especially the one who is extremely special among them. Otherwise, who knows when that king will descend in our country. If we don't handle it properly, it could be an unimaginable disaster. Wanligu Yoli lowered her head and fell into silence. Yes. Yoligu Yoli had once had a relationship with the most ancient and the most ferocious demon king, Warban. The demon king summoned dragon hero, the dragon slayer from the myths. The god of was the dragon was the god slayer god, the dragon slayer from the myths, was the god was the god was that? Was god. Had the was the of was had gu was the was. That time, Wanligu Yoli was one of the witches summoned by Warban for the summoning ritual. Including Wanligu Yoli, after the summoning ritual ended, 2/3 of the witches suffered a heavy mental blow because of the taboo ritual to summon the god of disobedience. Some of them fell into a coma and became vegetative. Some of them went mad and had their lives ruined. Wanli Gu Yoli was one of the 1/3 who was lucky enough to survive and had witnessed that scene with her own eyes. Therefore, to Wanli Gu Yoli, there was nothing more terrifying than the demon king who killed gods. Not to mention, the 7th king was born in the last 6 months, and he was the most unfathomable and mysterious of the god slayers. It was said that after he made his debut, he fought against Italy's King of Swords in less than a week after obtaining the summoning ritual. In the end, he caused a huge loss of 15 billion euros and won. It was said that when he faced the 3 god slayers in Italy, including the oldest demon king, Warban, and Luo Hao, he still won with his own strength. It was said that he and the Black Prince Yurek also had a confrontation in Napoli. In the end, even the young master who was known for his resourcefulness and speed could only retreat in defeat. It was said that even God Zugnivia, who had been active in the dark of the magic world and was known as the Demon Queen, was helpless and fearful of him. Although it had been less than half a year since he became a god slayer, the name Noah Doria had already spread to every corner of the magic world because of his various miraculous achievements. Now, most people believe that even if this king had the least experience among the god slayers, in terms of power, this youngest king had the qualifications to be above the rest of the god slayers. Therefore, no matter who it was, they all maintained the highest respect and awe for this youngest king. Wanli Gu Yoli, who had once witnessed the terror of the demon king, had long regarded him as a supreme existence. If possible, Wanli Gu Yoli really did not want to have anything to do with the absolute king who even Marquis Warban could only nurse a grudge against. However, when he thought that the god slayer might really come to this country one day, if he did not have any understanding of the king, the consequences would be unimaginable if he angered the king. At the thought of this, Wanli Gu Yoli suppressed his inner resistance and looked at the piece of cloth in Ganji Winterhorse's hand with some difficulty. Even if I help, what can you see from this ordinary piece of cloth? Generally, items that can stimulate spirit vision are items with strong curse power. Ganji Winterhorse handed the piece of cloth in Wanli Gu Yoli's direction. And this piece of cloth was left behind by the king during the battle. It must be a piece of clothing from his body. During the battle, it must have been bathed in the king's curse power and has a trace of curse power fluctuations. We just want to ask Miss Yoli to see if it will work. Wanli Gu Yoli suddenly hesitated. After a while, the kind-hearted girl sighed. I understand. After saying that, Wanli Gu Yoli stretched out his hand and took the piece of cloth. He held it tightly in his hand, closed his eyes, and entered a state of meditation. At this moment, traces of curse power fluctuations slowly flowed out from Wanli Gu Yoli's body. Then, Wanli Gu Yoli opened his eyes and looked at the piece of cloth in his hand. It was also at this moment that Wanli Gu Yoli suddenly felt his consciousness drifting away. She saw it. In the middle of a dense forest, a young man sat on the ground, his upper body leaning against a tree. His eyes were closed and he had fallen into a coma. On his body, not only were his clothes tattered, but they were also full of scars. The most serious thing was that there was a huge wound on his abdomen. It was a wound that seemed to have been dug open by something sharp. Inside, thick blood flowed out. Ah! Wanli Gu Yoli exclaimed and could not help but let go of the piece of cloth in his hand. What's wrong? Ganji Winterhorse quickly asked. Miss Gu Yoli, did you see something? I saw it. It's very likely that the king's person was seriously injured. Wanli Gu Yoli looked at the forest around the shrine in a panic. After swallowing a mouthful of saliva, he said such a sentence. And, it's in that forest. What did you say? Ganji Winterhorse was stunned there. In the dense forest, Wanli Gu Yoli and Ganji Winterhorse trotted on the forest road. Yes, it's here. Wanli Gu Yoli looked around and then pointed in a direction. The place I saw is in front. Ganji Winterhorse nodded and slowed down his pace. He took Wanli Guyoli, pushed aside the grass, and walked forward. Not long after, the vision in front suddenly opened up. Then, the two saw it. The young man, whose body was riddled with wounds, seemed to be in a deep sleep. He leaned against a tree and bathed in the sunlight. Around him, rabbits, squirrels, and even deer approached and licked the wounds on his body. It was as if they were helping the young man heal, hoping that he would wake up. Because it was too beautiful, Wanli Guyoli and Ganji Winterhorse both looked at this scene in a daze, unable to recover for a long time. Chapter 1393. Pain. That was what Noah was feeling right now. No. It should be said that after the three-headed dragon's claw pierced through his abdomen and pushed him into the lava, even though he had lost consciousness, the intense pain still attacked Noah's mind. It made Noah feel as if the three-headed dragon's claw had been stuck in his body and had not been pulled out. It was very uncomfortable. However, this uncomfortable feeling told Noah he was still alive. Only living people could feel pain. Only a living person would feel discomfort. Therefore, although Noah could not say that he was enjoying the pain, he felt a sense of relief. After calming down, Noah subconsciously felt as if he was dreaming. There was a sentence that kept echoing in his mind. "You defeated me, but you did not pass the final trial of humanity." These were the final words that the demon king called Az-Dakaha left for him. What did he mean by that? Noah could roughly understand. Is it because I am stronger than that lizard and am unable to kill him? Simply put, it meant that he did not reach the condition to kill Az-Dakaha. In terms of the bestowment game, Noah did not reach the victory condition. Therefore, even after killing Az-Dakaha, the demonic dragon still came back to life and dealt a fatal blow to Noah. Because there was no contract, he was careless. But thinking about it carefully, that guy was also a demon king. The demon king called Az-Dakaha had actually started his own bestowment game long ago. That bestowment game was called Humanity's Final Trial. When the three-headed dragon reappeared, this bestowment game had already started. And it was just like in Pest's game, where he had to solve the riddle of the inheritance of the Piper of Hamel. In the bestowment game called Humanity's Final Trial, if he wanted to win, he had to solve the essence of the three-headed dragon as the final trial of humanity. In other words, if he wanted to defeat the three-headed dragon, it might not be too difficult for Noah. The difficult part was that Noah still had to solve the riddle of the three-headed dragon as the final trial of humanity. Humanity's final trial was the main reason for the destruction of humanity. Noah needed to unravel the reason why Az-Dakaha became a human in the final trial. Only then could he kill the three-headed dragon and make him disappear completely. Otherwise, no matter how many times he defeated the three-headed dragon, that fellow would continue to revive. After all, the three-headed dragon had said it himself. Go all out. Use all your wits. Let's use up all our brute strength. Try turning into a sword of light that can pierce through my chest. If these words were to be taken as a hint to clear the human's final trial, then it would be just like what the word said. Not only would it require strength and courage, but it would also require wisdom, right? Furthermore, the last sentence also proved that the three-headed dragon's words were a hint. Try turning into a sword of light that can pierce through my chest. If he wanted to kill the three-headed dragon, he would have to pierce through its heart. Furthermore, that was under the condition that the essence of the three-headed dragon as a human in the final trial was unraveled. Then, what was the main reason for the destruction of humanity that created Az-Dakaha as a human in the final trial? Feeling the extreme pain, while Noah felt relieved, the rest of his consciousness was completely focused on this question. Under such circumstances, the pain attacking Noah's subconscious became more and more intense. Then, Noah gradually woke up from his unconscious state. Ah! You're awake. Just as Noah was about to open his eyes, a cute and childish voice entered Noah's ears. Noah slowly opened his eyes. Then, a young but devilish face appeared in front of him. Noah had only seen that face once. However, even though he had only seen it once, Noah clearly remembered who the owner of that face was. Pandora. Impressively, it was the mother of all God's layers, Pandora. Welcome to the nether star realm of life and death, my cute son. Pandora pursed her lips and smiled coquettishly, a smile that did not match her young and tender face at all. Regarding my mischievous youngish son who disappeared from this world for a month, and when he reappeared, he was inexplicably heavily injured. As a mother, I should have the right to ask, right? Undoubtedly, there was nothing wrong with what she said. However, when Pandora said such a sentence with her appearance of 14 or 15 years old, it gave people the feeling that there was something wrong with what she said. It made people speechless. Noah could only stare blankly at Pandora, who was lying on the ground above him. He finally understood what was going on. Is that so? Noah muttered. Have I returned to this world? Although he did not know what was going on, before Noah lost consciousness, he vaguely saw the scene of a broken feather suddenly flying out of the glowing heart that he pulled out from the three-headed dragon's chest. Presumably, the world fragment used the fact that he had retrieved it, and under the urging of the world itself, brought Noah back to the space between worlds. And Noah was heavily injured, so he could not be left alone in the space between worlds, right? Therefore, it was probably Gaia and Alea who sent Noah here. No matter what, Noah survived. Thinking of this, Noah stretched out his hand and touched his abdomen. Now, there was no wound there. This was because Noah was not in his own body right now. He had only let his consciousness enter the nether world and come before Pandora. After returning to his body, he still had to treat the wound. Otherwise, he might really die. But, since he was still fine, Noah should have been saved by someone, right? Chapter 1394. His mind gradually regained its clarity. Opening his eyes, Noah just stared at the unfamiliar ceiling in a daze. The things that appeared in his mind were not his current situation, nor the gods that Pandora warned him about, but the battle with the mystic dragon in the previous world. I didn't expect that lizard to have another cosmology. Although he wasn't that familiar with another cosmology, he was still not that familiar with it. However, Noah now had a simulated star atlas, another cosmology. So, he more or less knew some knowledge about it. Simply put, another cosmology, which was equivalent to a cosmology, was the mystery of the gods themselves. Or, it could be said that the so-called another cosmology was the construction of the world of the gods themselves. Take Norse mythology as an example. According to the legends, the gods led by the main god Odin all lived in the realm of the Asgard gods, in a world called Asgard. And one of another cosmology of the Norse gods was Asgard. And so on. The Olympus of the Greek gods. The 3,000 worlds of Buddhism. The heaven of Christianity. The heavenly court of the China gods. Those were all part of the simulated star atlas, another cosmology. In addition, the center of the cosmology of each mythology was also another cosmology. Like the heavenly book of the East and the Bible of the West, they were all one of another cosmology. It was precisely because he was at the center of a mythology that the Son of Heaven, who had another cosmology, had the ability to become the center of the gods and had a cosmology itself. This kind of power that could infinitely expand one's own cosmology, thereby interfering with the outside world, and even destroying the opponent's cosmology and worldview, could even exceed the three-digit number of Hecate. It could be imagined how much of a violation its power was. And the Avesta that Az Dakaha used was another cosmology of the Zoroastrianism. That was the manifestation of the dualism of good and evil that Persian mythology advocated. By defining oneself as the rightmost side of good and evil, that is, the evil end, imitating the target's cosmology, and using it as a mirror to host oneself in another cosmology. The object that was imitated by Asvita's universe would have all of its original properties added to the user's body. This included physical abilities, racial characteristics, and even the gift itself. Everything would be obtained by the user of Avesta until the target of the imitation left the battle or was defeated. Not only that, but this, another cosmology, which defined itself as the most right wing of good and evil, could also use the simulated cosmology as a mirror to counteract the opponent's power. Noah unleashed the true name of Excalibur, which had been multiplied countless times. Its power was offset by the three-headed dragon's Avesta. In other words, this, another cosmology, could not only imitate the opponent's power and add it to the user's body, but it could also counteract the opponent's attack. It was a violation to the limit of a gift. The reason why Azdakaha was able to repel millions of gods was because of this, another cosmology. With this, another cosmology, no matter how many opposing gods came, Azdakaha's power would increase as their numbers increased. Coupled with his three-digit power, the combination of these two attributes made him invincible. Therefore, Azdakaha, who possessed this, another cosmology, had the terrifying ability to, not win in a one-on-one fight, but in a one-on-many fight, he would become stronger and stronger. This was simply invincible. Of course, there were exceptions to everything. Azdakaha's Avesta had two cosmologies that could not be imitated no matter what. One was the cosmology of the gods of the Zoroastrianism. The other was the human's cosmology as the target of the human's final trial. With only these two cosmologies, no matter what, Avesta could not imitate them. Fortunately, Noah's authority was a combination of his own power and the power of the gods of the Zoroastrianism, Welslana. It just so happened that he had two cosmologies that Avesta could not imitate. Therefore, Noah's authority was not imitated. Otherwise, no matter how strong Noah was, he would not be able to defeat Azdakaha. In comparison, although another cosmology also has extremely strong power, the target of its use is quite picky. Illusory star Taisway. This was the another cosmology that Noah had obtained from Galji. That was the cosmology of China's mythology group. The so-called Taisway referred to the Star of Calamity in China's mythology group, the Taisway Star Lord. Its true appearance was the star spirit of a fictional planet that was hypothesized to be located in the opposite position of Jupiter. In China's mythology group, Jupiter was regarded as the sacred star of the celestial body division method of the 12 equatorial stars that divided the starry sky. It was widely believed in under the name Jupiter. In addition, the 12 zodiacs also used Jupiter as the benchmark of celestial bodies. It was regarded as the highest god of the Greek gods, the lower half of Zeus. In China's mythology, Taisway was named for its three-faced and six-armed body or the image of a catfish-like dragon. As the illusory star, Taisway was different from the other star spirits in the box. It did not have a real form, so it was described in various forms. The Star Sea Dragon King was the identity that Taisway Star Lord used to hide his true identity by changing his appearance and name. That was why Azdakaha's seal contained the another cosmology of simulated creation. The ability of the illusory star Taisway was to seal the strongest race, other than the pure-blooded dragon species, into a fictional world. Chapter 1395. The girl who walked and had long flaxen hair that reached her waist. She was wearing a witch's robe. The girl with the first aid kit did not seem to notice that Noah had woken up. She first walked in quietly, turned around, and gently closed the door in a well-mannered manner. Then, the girl turned around and looked in the direction of Noah. When she turned around, the girl's eyes met with Noah's eyes. Aw! The girl suddenly opened her eyes slightly and let out a small cry of surprise. Seeing this, Noah felt that the girl's action was a little cute and couldn't help but laugh. It was not until then that Noah noticed what kind of place he was in. This was a Japanese-style Japanese house. The floor was not covered with tiles, but tatami. There was very little furniture around. There were calligraphy murals hanging on the walls. In the corner, there was an incense burner that was lingering with sandalwood, releasing a calming fragrance to every corner of the room. Noah, on the other hand, was lying on a bed that was directly laid out on the tatami. Pandora said that Noah came to the island country at the end of the East. So, Noah was not surprised to see that he was in a standard Japanese-style Japanese house. However, when Noah moved his body slightly, an unimaginable pain spread from his abdomen to his whole body, causing Noah to frown and squeeze out a bitter sound from his throat. This extremely soft sound finally woke the girl up. The girl seemed to want to come closer and take care of Noah, but he didn't know what she was afraid of. As a result, she looked like she wanted to come closer but didn't dare to. She was very conflicted. Are you okay? Hearing the girl's nervous and timid voice, Noah smiled bitterly. It doesn't look like you're okay, but you shouldn't die yet, don't worry. Hearing this, the girl breathed a sigh of relief. Then, a nervous expression appeared on her face again. She quickly squatted down and made a standard sitting position, and put 3 fingers on the tatami in front of her, and bowed deeply to Noah. I'm really sorry, I wanted to cast a healing spell on the king, but for some reason, the spell didn't work. Later, Mr. Gonzai told me that the god slayers are immune to all spells, so we can only use ordinary methods to heal you. In this case, Noah did feel the pain in his abdomen, as if it was tied up by something. Thinking about it, it should be the bandages. But now, Noah had woken up. Since Noah had woken up, as long as he didn't die immediately, there would be a way to heal him completely. In addition, the god slayers had strong vitality and recovery. These injuries, in a few days, they should be healed. Compared to that, Noah was more curious about something else. Thinking of this, Noah endured the pain in his abdomen and stood up with some difficulty. Ah! The girl was a little flustered. No. You can't. King. You're still injured. So, I'll punish you by sending me a table of good food. How about that? Ha! Ha! Wanrifuri Yoli was a little flustered and confused, and asked very carefully. Only like this? Oh. Are you not satisfied? Noah raised his eyebrows and smiled somewhat playfully. Speaking of which, there are indeed some people with special hobbies who always hope that others can punish them, and the heavier the punishment, the happier they are. If this is the case, indeed, this degree of punishment can't satisfy you. I'll consider the content of the punishment again. No such thing. I don't have that kind of strange hobby. Wanrifuri Yoli quickly said, and then remembered Noah's request and stood up. I understand. Although I don't know if it can satisfy the king, I will try my best to cook the best dishes. Please wait a moment. With such a sentence, Wanrifuri Yoli resolutely walked out of the door with an expression full of a sense of mission. Presumably, this girl should feel that if the dishes she made couldn't satisfy the king, it would cause the king to be angry, and that would be a disaster. So, she left as if she had a mission, right? In short, Noah felt that there was no place to complain. Stroking his abdomen that was still in severe pain, Noah said to himself, "Let's treat the injury first." After making up his mind, Noah closed his eyes and immersed his mind into his body. In the depths of Noah's heart, at this time, there was an extremely beautiful scene. The outline of a stone plate with 10 patterns connected to it was suspended in the center. In the middle of the stone plate, a sun was imprinted on it at some point. In the sun, a mighty lion and a holy dragon faced each other and roared at each other. Such a stone plate was surrounded by a universe that was like the Milky Way everywhere. The stone plate was authority. The sun in the stone plate was the sun's authority. And the universe around the stone plate was naturally the simulated star atlas, another cosmology. Chapter 1396. Looking at the miraculous scene in the depths of his heart that represented almost all of his power, Noah focused his attention on the stone plate. At this time, the stone plate was in a gray state. It was like a skill that had not been activated in the game. There was no sign of it being active. As expected, I still need to adapt. Every time he arrived in a world, Noah's authority needed to adapt to the world. It would take a month before he could use it without restraint. However, Gaia had told Alea that this adaptation was mainly because the authority's power had the possibility of affecting the world itself. It did not belong to this world, so it needed to adapt. However, Noah's authority was the power obtained from this world, so there should be no need for him to adapt. Unfortunately, Noah's 10 incarnations authority not only had Welleslana's and Mercator's power, but also his own power. In addition, Noah's powerful vitality had completely absorbed the authority and turned it into his own power, removing all the restrictions that the authority should have. Therefore, after arriving in this world, he still needed to adapt. Of course, because this world already had a power called authority, Noah did not need as long as a month to adapt to the authority in this world. I need 7 days to adapt. Noah withdrew his consciousness from the depths of his body and turned to look at the energy source that was like a black hole. Looks like I need to use the power of an item to recover. After saying that, Noah's mind moved and the energy in the energy source in his body was converted into mana. Then, Noah opened his eyes and used a trace of mana to open the gate of Babylon. Wang. Following the sound of space trembling, a golden ripple appeared on top of Noah's palm and spat out a gorgeous scabbard. Holding the scabbard, Noah sighed. Luckily, in the battle with the lizard, I did not use Avalon. The relic named Avalon not only had an extremely powerful healing ability, but it also had the powerful function of preventing the user from being drained by external forces. However, in terms of healing, Noah had the spirit avatar. In terms of defense, Noah also had the Dragon Emperor avatar. Therefore, during the battle with the three-headed dragon, Noah did not use Avalon. Furthermore, in the battle against the three-headed dragon, Noah also had to use his full power, using his trump card to convert all the energy in his energy source into divine power, which was the most suitable power to unleash his authority. Although the energy in Noah's energy source was endless, its output was limited. There was no extra space for him to use his magic and activate his relic's power. If it was a noble relic like the Excalibur that only required a certain amount of magic to release it, then it would be fine. However, a noble phantasm like Avalon, which required a continuous supply of magic in order to maintain its liberated state, was a different matter altogether. Considering that he had the Dragon Emperor and the Spirit for defense and healing, Noah did not use Avalon. Now that he thought about it carefully, this decision was really the right one. After all, the three-headed dragon's Asvitas, another cosmology, was able to imitate the cosmology of objects other than itself, thereby obtaining all of the other party's properties. At that time, if Noah had used Avalon, a noble relic with a Celtic mythological cosmology, causing the three-headed dragon to obtain the defensive and healing abilities of Avalon, then it would have been really troublesome. Moreover, the three-headed dragon could also use the power of another cosmology to use the target's cosmology as a mirror to offset the other party's power. As long as he wanted to, he could erase the power of Avalon at any time, causing Noah to lose more than he gained, right? That, another cosmology, is really against the rules. With such a sigh, Noah infused magic into the scabbard in his hand, causing a bright golden light to bloom from the scabbard and envelop his whole body. He closed his eyes and began to recover. In fact, Noah, who was thinking this, did not think that his another cosmology was not against the rules. The simulated star atlas, another cosmology, which was called the illusory star Tisway, could ignore the difference in strength and unconditionally seal the two strongest species, the innate gods and the star spirits of the stars. Although there were restrictions in using it and it could only be used against gods and stars, as long as it was against these two races, even if there were a double-digit number of them, they would not be able to defeat Noah. Among them, there was the white Yiksha, who had sovereignty over 14 suns and was known as the strongest star spirit. Unless the white Yiksha also had the simulated star atlas, another cosmology. Otherwise, against Noah's, another cosmology, the white night king who had once wreaked havoc in an area could only nurse a grievance, right? He did not know if he had considered that if he made Noah wait too long, it might also make the king angry. About 15 minutes later, Wanli-gu Yoli walked in with a tray full of dishes, looking nervous. Plates of fragrant dishes were placed neatly on the side of the bed. At this time, Noah was holding a bowl of rice, picking up a mouthful of food, and tasting it slightly. Looking at Noah's appearance as he tasted the dishes, Wanli-gu Yoli's pretty face could not help but show a trace of nervousness. Clearly aware of Wanli-gu Yoli's nervousness, Noah was more or less amused in his heart. However, his impression of Wanli-gu Yoli improved a lot. Although he did not know what was going on, Wanli-gu Yoli seemed to have been trying her best to avoid provoking Noah's disgust. Under such circumstances, if Noah asked for a good meal, then, who would want to find a famous chef or a hotel to make a table of luxurious dishes? However, this girl did not do so, but faithfully made this table of dishes with her own strength. Obviously, Wanli-gu Yoli did not have as many playful hearts as the general power holders. She was quite honest. In addition, Wanli-gu Yoli seemed to be very afraid. As the king of the god slayers, she still took care of Noah when Noah was seriously injured. She was probably also very kind, right? In this way, Noah could not deliberately find fault against his heart. Moreover, the dishes made by Wanli-gu Yoli were indeed not bad. On the contrary, this kind of home-cooked food made Noah quite like it. So, Noah smiled slightly. Not bad, it's delicious. Wanli-gu Yoli's eyes suddenly lit up, and her expression suddenly became cheerful. You like it. It's really great. It's good that you can be happy. Noah curled his lips. While eating the dishes made by Wanli-gu Yoli, he talked to himself. So, the person over there, it's almost time for you to come out, right? This sentence, unsurprisingly, made Wanli-gu Yoli startled. Immediately afterward, Wanli-gu Yoli seemed to feel something, and her expression began to look around with a serious expression. However, it was different from Noah. The reason why this girl found something wrong was entirely because of her overly keen intuition. In the next second, a helpless and frivolous laughter that was mixed with bitter laughter sounded from the surroundings. Really worthy of being the strongest king and the witch with outstanding spiritual sense. This little trick really can't be hidden from the two of you. As such a voice sounded, a figure slowly emerged from the corner of the room. Seeing this person, Wanli-gu Yoli was slightly surprised. Mr. Gonzai. Sorry, Miss Yoli, I left the king to you alone to take care of. Gonzai smiled at Wanli-gu Yoli, then looked at Noah, bowed his head, and saluted. I'm Gonzai Dongma of the History Compilation Committee. I have something to discuss with you. I wonder if I can borrow some time. Chapter 1397. The History Compilation Committee. Noah stopped what he was doing, and his curiosity was slightly aroused. It is said that it is the only formal organization with the nature of spells in this country, right? Isn't it amazing? This was not a polite remark. In Europe, there were countless magic associations active in the mysterious world that ordinary people could not touch. After all, Europe was the birthplace of magic, and it was also a place where various myths and legends were extremely popular. All kinds of magic power that had been passed down from ancient times to the present had accumulated, and naturally, it had become the phenomenon of many factions. In this country, there were not so many associations with the nature of spells. There was only one that even monopolized the power of official organizations. Anyone would think that the History Compilation Committee was not simple. In this regard, Gonchi Winterhorse just smiled perfunctorily. You must be joking. Unlike a big place like Europe, we are just an organization in a small island country at the end of the East. We only have a little influence here. Unlike those famous magic associations, even in various places around the world, they can more or less show a little power, right? This was also a fact. It was precisely because this country's geographical location was relatively remote and its territory was not comparable to other countries that it could develop into a situation where there was only one force that could cover the sky. In fact, in Italy, although there were so many magic associations, but the magic associations that really stood at the top, in terms of power and influence, almost every one of them was comparable to the History Compilation Committee. For example, both the Red Copper Black Cross and the Bronze Black Cross that Erica and Liliana belonged to had as much power as the History Compilation Committee. As for the Sage Parliament, which specialized in the study of the God Slayer and the God of Disobedience, because of its special nature, there was no way to compare it. However, with Princess Alice, who was known as the most elegant and beautiful in Europe, as the former speaker, it was enough to prove that the Sage Parliament was not simple. Noah was clear about this, Gonchi Winterhorse was also clear about this, and even Wanli Guyoli was very clear about this. However, even if it was clear, no one would discuss this matter. The reason was simple. Even the most outstanding forces were extremely fragile in the face of the God Slayer and the God of Disobedience. Although Noah did not have the idea of looking down on the forces of this world, he did not really regard them as a threat. Therefore, Noah didn't care too much about it. As for Wanli Guyoli and Gonchi Dongma, they were also aware of this fact. Naturally, they would not embarrass themselves in front of Noah. Immediately, the three of them fell into silence. Noah ate silently. Those elders used to be the elders of this country's spell world, but now they have transcended the mortal world and become extraordinary existences. Among them, there were even people who used to be disobedient gods, but later chose to live in seclusion and entered secluded world. Oh. Noah narrowed his eyes. Since they are already living in seclusion, then why do they still want to meet me? If possible, I also hope that they can quickly transcend and become Buddhas. Gonchi Dongma spread out his hands. Jumping out from time to meddle in other people's business should be a common problem for the elders. We also have a headache when those elders suddenly come out and tell us what to do. Gone. Mr. Gonchi. Wanli Guyoli said with some confusion. You shouldn't say that, right? Well, in fact, it is indeed so. To suddenly request to meet the king, for us, it is a bit abrupt, isn't it? Gonchi Dongma said without a care. Then, king, I wonder if you can meet with them. Hearing this, Noah's eyes showed traces of thoughtfulness. After a while, Noah suddenly asked. The disobedient gods will appear in places related to their mythologies. This country has the concept of 8 million gods, so a god should have appeared in the past. Since there is a god, then there will be a god who will come to visit, right? The sudden question caused Gonfang Dongma to be slightly startled. He immediately replied. In the past, there was indeed a king who visited this country. That's true, otherwise it wouldn't make sense. Noah nodded and continued to ask. Then, at that time, did the so-called elders meet with those god slayers? Gonchi Dongma frowned and said with some uncertainty. They shouldn't have, right? Those elders don't seem to care much about the god slayers. Oh. Noah smiled indifferently. Then, why do they suddenly want to meet with me, the youngest god slayer? Gonchi Dongma was stunned. Seeing this, Noah gave the answer. It's very simple, because I have something that they are interested in, and I have some relationship with the object of their interest. After saying this, Noah looked at Gonchi Dongma with a smile. So, there is no need to meet. Help me tell them that I have no interest in the gods sleeping on this island, so they can rest assured. Gods. Gonchi Dongma was shocked. There's a god sleeping on this island. Wanli Gu Yole asked in surprise and bewilderment. King, is this true? Sort of. Noah didn't know what to think and looked at Gonchi Dongma. By the way, lend me your phone. Chapter 1398. In this world, in order to facilitate communication, Erica and Liliana had also prepared a phone for Noah. However, because phones could not be used in other worlds, Noah had left his phone with Erica and Liliana before leaving this world the last time. Of course, Noah had secretly left his phone behind, and did not tell Erica and Liliana. Otherwise, if the two girls found out that Noah had left his phone behind and could not be contacted, Erica and Liliana would definitely throw a tantrum, right? This time, although Noah did not choose to return to this world after a month, it seemed that only a month had passed since Noah left this world. After all, before Noah left, he had destroyed the volcano and the beach in Nabali because of the battle with Perseus and Yerek. Even if such a major event was hidden from the eyes of ordinary people, it could not be hidden from the forces in the magic world. Of course, this included the official history compilation committee of this country. After asking Winter Horse Gonchi, Noah confirmed that he had only left this world for a month. He just did not know how Erica and Liliana had been doing during this month. Presumably, the two knights had also tried various methods to confirm Noah's whereabouts, right? Unfortunately, in the end, it would definitely end in failure. Now that Noah had returned, if he did not contact his two followers, they might reprimand Noah when they found out about his whereabouts, right? Therefore, after borrowing Winter Horse Ganchi's phone, Noah relied on his strong memory to recall Erica's phone number and dialed it. Although there are a lot of things that I want to talk to you about, you should first tell me where our king is and how he is doing right now. As soon as she received the phone call, Erica said this in a tone that was reminiscent of a fake smile. Although Noah was of a mind to ask how Erica knew that it was him who called when he didn't even say anything, he didn't think it was necessary to ask that question in front of a knight who had mastered all kinds of magic tricks, right? Therefore, Noah answered straightforwardly. I'm in Japan now. Japan. That island country. Erica asked in a displeased tone. Why did you go to that place? Well, for various reasons, Noah said perfunctorily. All in all, I'm here now. Is everything okay on your side? A month's time was neither long nor short. If something really troublesome happened, 1 month was enough to raise the level of this troublesome matter several times, or even cause a series of troubles. That was more than enough time. This was especially true when Erica and Liliana were in Italy right now. No matter what, Italy was the base of that astonishingly stupid idiot. If that idiot Tony intends to play any tricks, during the period of Noah's absence, I'm afraid that Italy will be directly played by that idiot. Noah only wanted to know if anything had happened in Italy during this period. At the mention of this topic, Erica's voice became serious. To be honest, we're in big trouble now. Big trouble. Noah sensed that something was wrong and said straightforwardly. Is it related to the deicide? Or the god of disobedience? In this world, only these two things could make Erica, a knight with extremely high self-esteem, say big trouble. Otherwise, with Erica's strength and ability, it couldn't be easier to deal with it. And it turned out that Noah's guess was correct. It's related to the deicide. Erica sighed. I don't know why, but after you left, the news of you obtaining the Holy Grail suddenly spread throughout the entire magic world in Europe. Now, almost all the magic associations in Europe are looking for your whereabouts. Hearing this, Noah frowned. Holy Grail. It was the center of the magical engineering incident caused by the Black Prince Yurek, which had once involved the entire magic world in Europe in an unprecedented battle. This was a sacred relic of the demonic path that had a deep relationship with the goddess of earth, and was even closely related to the god of steel, who was known as the last king. Not long ago, Noah had snatched it from the hands of its original owner, the being known as the god ancestor, Guinevere. Other than Noah and Guinevere, only Erica, Liliana, and Alice knew about this matter. In that case, who was the one who spread the news? After thinking for a while, Noah understood. Guinevere did it, right? I'm afraid so, Erica said. For the Devil Queen, the importance of the Holy Grail is needless to say. Now, this divine relic that even the Black Prince Yurek couldn't snatch has fallen into your hands, and she couldn't do anything about it. So, naturally, she could only follow Athena's method and put the blame on you, then look for an opportunity to snatch the Holy Grail back. That famous demonic Tao sacred tool was of extraordinary significance to the world of magic. After all, in the legends, the so-called Holy Grail was a vessel that contained the blood of Christ and had all kinds of mysterious powers. Some people said that it could rejuvenate people. Some people said that it could bring people back from the dead. Some people said that it could make people immortal. Some people said that it could make people become gods directly. There were all kinds of legends, and in addition to the fact that it was a sacred relic of Christianity, it was natural that it had such a special status. Therefore, as long as one was in the magic world, there was no one who didn't want it. Of course, those who really knew what the Holy Grail that Noah snatched from Guinevere was, knew that its real function was not that. However, this divine relic that was closely related to the gods of snake and steel was so valuable that even the Black Prince Yurek coveted it. Now that the news that Noah had obtained the Holy Grail had spread, it was enough to cause a sensation in the magic world. Especially the Black Prince who had been pursuing the Holy Grail, it was impossible for him not to take action. The troublesome god slayer that Erica mentioned was probably Yurek, right? As expected, Erica immediately said. After the news spread, the Black Prince Yurek came to us directly and forced us to know your whereabouts, but even we didn't know where you were. In the end, he returned without success. However, the royal factory, led by the Black Prince, has been quite active recently and has even been monitoring me and Lily. Lily and I had no choice but to part ways temporarily and return to our respective magic societies. What about Alice? Noah asked. Since such a big thing has been involved, it's impossible for Alice to sit back and do nothing, right? It should be said that Her Royal Highness has been actively involved in all kinds of troublesome things, right? Erica sighed. The princess seems to be very happy to see the Black Prince running around helplessly trying to find your whereabouts. According to her, in order to give the Black Prince a good blow, she's prepared to use all her power to find you first and then laugh at him. That Her Royal Highness still likes to join in the fun. Noah said, a little speechless. Forget it. Since things have become like this, what are you going to do on your side? For the time being, Lily and I won't go to your side. There are people watching us all the time, Erica said after pondering for a moment. Although the news that you're in Japan shouldn't be hidden for long, as long as you don't do anything eye-catching, you shouldn't be discovered so soon. I'll tell Princess Alice about your news first. When the time comes, Princess Alice will go over to support you. That works too. Noah nodded unenthusiastically. Then I'll stay here for the time being. After chatting with Erica, Noah hung up the phone and laughed bitterly. I've just come back and I'm already in so much trouble. Does life have to be so exciting all the time? You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.